The only thing that I think the biggest change now, and it will continue to change, is like people do things with bet sizing that we never really thought of before. And that has to do with like access to what they call like GTO solvers, where a lot of people, so a solver is like, it's like a computer program that sort of tells you what the best play would be in a game theory optimal setting. Now, what does game theory optimal mean? It's a whole kind of science. It just means like the absolutely correct scientific way to play in a certain situation, in a certain mathematical situation. That's like game theory optimal. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of times you don't want to play game theory optimal because you won't win the most money. You'll win, but you won't win the most money playing that way. So I've always approached the game and teaching people the game not really to pay attention that much to game theory optimal choices.
Right.
But now, and also to get access to the game theory optimal answers was quite hard. Like you would need to have a very strong computer, and like one hand might take a day to get the answer because it was like they call them game trees. So it was like calculating all these different possibilities. Mm-hmm. But as computing power has gotten like stronger and stronger, now you don't even need a strong computer because there's like web-based subscription services that already have a lot of these solutions already solved, or use like cloud computing. So where I'm getting at is like, there's a lot more access for the average type player to use these tools. And what these tools have brought out is like bet sizing types of variables that we never saw before. Like, when are you supposed to bet like 3 times the size of the pot? When do you bet like 20% the size of the pot? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the new part to this. That's probably stuff that I hadn't seen 5-10 years ago, is like these varying bet sizes and no limit.
Got you.
Where everybody would just usually bet like half pot, 3/4 pot. You just wouldn't see that much, like over betting and stuff like that. But you still don't see that stuff much up to 2.5. I mean, you're talking like at 5.10 and above. I still think that you don't like, you can still make pretty decent money at 2.5. And I'm talking like maybe $40-50 an hour or something like that. And you won't see very, very tough competition, but you will start to see really tough competition at the higher levels. And actually part of that was crazy, which makes poker so hard, is like, you used to have like rich guys, whales, be in the high stakes games, and there was always like free money to go around. Now those guys got pulled away and they play in private games. If they still play poker, they're playing in either a home game or they're playing in a game in a casino that you can't get into. Like it's like a quasi private game. So any game where like you go and sit down at the win at like 5-10, there's not going to be any free money like at that table. That's going to be a really hard game because there's no bad players, because the bad players are in other games that you're not allowed to play in.
Exactly.
At that level.
Okay.
So it's kind of like so there's like a politics thing to it. There's like a politics nature to it too. So I've seen a lot of guys transition to like spending more time thinking about how can I build my own game and curate my own lineup, as opposed to improving their skill as poker players. Because that's really the way to make the most money, is to like run your own game, invite the right players.
Oh, okay. I see what you're trying to get at. Okay, because I was about to say, what? Start your own game? I'm like, oh, okay. Invite whoever you think that you could beat, basically.
Right. Host your own game, curate your own game. So I've seen a lot of guys like go in that direction, spend their time, as opposed to like, trying to become like the best poker skilled players in the world, going in the direction of, all right, I'm going to, set my own lineup. What am I going to do to make my game the best and get these guys in the game? Because I know that I can beat these guys. Plus, maybe I'll get a piece of the rake from the casino. So yeah, they have these quasi private games in casinos, like, and they're in all casinos, like it was, 25-50 or 50-100 at 100-200 at the win. Like those aren't, you can't just sit and play in that game.
Yeah, you got to get invited.
Yeah, you got to be invited.
Definitely. So yeah, I mentioned bet sizing. So there's this thing in sales where it's like a scientific thing. Like you don't ever want to like say like, oh, my services is like, I don't know, $2,000, right? Because people think that it's like negotiable or something like that. So you want to say it like it's like 2150, right? Would you say that kind of that same theory kind of applies in poker? Like if instead of betting like $2,000, that players should like bet like some odd amount?
You might be confusing this with something that I call chip spiking. To answer your first question, no, actually, it's more of a percentage. So the number doesn't matter. If somebody's trying to play by like a computer, like game theory optimal, they're always going to be looking at more of a percentage. Like, like on this board, it's a 3-bet pot, meaning I re-raise pre-flop. I can bet 100% of all my range here for 20% of the pot. So whether the pot's 500, I'm going to bet 100. If the pot's 700, I'm going to bet 140. So they're just thinking about it like a percentage.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. Maybe what you were thinking about was like, I had sort of developed this thing called chip spiking, where at the low levels, I tell my students, like, when you have a strong hand, I tend to try to bet with oversized chips, meaning like if I'm in a 1-3 game and the chips that are being used are like $5 chips, maybe some 25s and like some $100 chips, right?
Okay.
If I have a strong hand, I like to start like a hand that I think is best, and I'm trying to like value bet somebody. I like to start like, if I'm going to bet like 80, like I'm going to actually use the $100 chip because I want the other person to see the pot size easily. If I bet 80 with like a bunch of $5 chips, people are bad with like estimating like clumps of things. Yeah. So if I bet 80 with a bunch of $5 chips, right, and then the next street I bet like 180 with a bunch of $5 chips. When they're at the river, that guy, like, he doesn't even know how big the pot is.
Exactly.
Now, if I have a really strong hand, I want him to know how big the pot is. So I'm putting like these big size chips. So he's seeing, it's gonna allow me to like bet.
Okay.
It's like when I make a river bet of like 400. Oh, it's not like crazy large. It's actually, I can see the pot's got like at least 500 in it because it's got 5. But if it was like a pile of yellow chips,
yellow chips,
red chips.
Okay. Okay, that's a good exploit. Yeah. That's a good exploit. Yeah, that's kind of like what I was thinking, like using bet size to kind of like get in the opponent's head, but chip spiking. That's a cool theory.